Elvis Presley, a poor kid from the Old South, was said to have created rock and roll itself by combining blues, gospel, and country music and giving it a boogie sound. He influenced everybody, including the Beatles. In fact, John Lennon once said, "Before Elvis, there was nothing." People called him the king, but is he really? Or is he just some old guy who was great for his time, but is outdated now? Watch the video and I'll show you what I think. Let's get with it. He was a white redneck who loved black music and made it into his own image with his good looks that won him tons of women, his great voice that was naturally an authoritative bass baritone, but with his range he could shoot it up to a hillbilly tenor in the early days, his natural charisma and provocative dance moves, which he ironically learned in black churches as his imitation of Pentecostal church members who felt the Spirit. It had nothing to do with sex, and he was horrified to hear people took it that way. He was controversial in his time, even though he was basically a shy, well-mannered, politically conservative guy who was a big mama's boy. He was also extremely patriotic and quite religious. Like his friend and label mate Johnny Cash, he originally wanted to be a gospel singer. He claimed that gospel was his favorite type of music, and he made many quality gospel songs. He was a devout, if inconsistent, Christian. He might have inspired the hippies later on, but he had nothing to do with their values. In the early days, he also had great guitar playing behind him, thanks to his personal guitar player, Scotty Moore, probably the best guitar player of rock's early days behind only Chuck Berry. It's hard for the youth of today to imagine because they are used to the idea of Elvis as he was in his later days, as a big fat guy who did cheesy, gimmick-laden Las Vegas concerts, who wore outrageous jumpsuits, and who was a mere parody of his former great self. But in his prime, Elvis was the coolest thing around. He was the greatest of the 50s idols, partly because he was so diverse. Unlike the other 50 stars who generally made the same type of music their whole career, the King did fast rockers, gorgeous ballads, blues, gospel, country, pop, even Latin and Hawaiian music. Unfortunately, he made a bad decision by letting himself get sold like a herd of cattle to conman Colonel Tom Parker, who admittedly made the King lots of money, but who ruined his legacy by not letting him reach out beyond his usual style and making him do one crappy movie after another. At first, his idea to branch out into films was a great way to promote his music. His masterpiece is the awesome Jailhouse Rock, where he plays a delinquent who beats a man to death after the man took exception to Elvis fooling around with his woman, before learning how to sing in prison and becoming a famous singer after being released. The music video is iconic, to say the least. He then got drafted into the Army. Instead of using his fame to get out of the service, he went in gladly and refused to take special treatment. He wanted to be treated the same as the other men while he was there. While he was gone in the Army, despite having his songs he left in the vault used while he was unable to play, he was left behind commercially by more wild upstarts like Jerry Lee Lewis, and his reputation was never quite the same as his peak 50s heyday. He also fell in love with a girl named Priscilla, a pretty girl he met overseas who would famously become his wife. Their relationship would be controversial by today's standards, since she was in her mid-teens, but back then it wasn't all that uncommon. At first his movies were acclaimed. Besides the classic Jailhouse Rock, there was Viva Las Vegas, the Western romance Love Me Tender, and Blue Hawaii. But soon the movies would become gimmicky and schlocky, and the King's reputation took a big dive because of it. As an actor, Elvis was not technically talented, but he had a great on-screen presence when he was at his peak. Of course, the best Elvis movie didn't actually feature the King, but that's neither here nor there. The Colonel used the King to his own ends, draining him dry financially to feed his gambling addiction, and basically just using him, even while Elvis was loyal to him till the end. He also briefly quit his live shows, where he was so dynamic, to focus on his failing acting career. Finally, he gave up the movie business and did the now famous comeback special, where he refocused on music, which was what he was actually good at. His last years were sad ones, sadly. Marital troubles, another low turn in his career, friends who betrayed him, and irresponsible behavior took their toll on the king. The once incredibly handsome king was now overeating to fill his emptiness, and he was fat and bloated, and he was abusing pain meds because of years of overwork and stress, which was ironic because Elvis was openly anti-drug. Sadly, he died in his bathroom. The rumor that he died on the toilet is just a cruel urban legend. Despite his title as the king, Elvis was very humble, and he never seemed to have a high opinion of himself. During one concert, where a fan shouted, "You're the king, Elvis," Elvis humbly turned to him and said, "No, Christ is the king. I'm just a singer." Is he still the king? Of course he is, and always will be. Even today, among rock singers, very few have challenged or surpassed his title as America's greatest rock singer. And people still dress up like him and pretend to be him. And you still see the odd Elvis sighting, even though he'd be like 100 now. Because people can't accept that the king is gone. But the king is not gone. He is dead, yes, but his legacy in music will never die. Long live the king. One more thing. You should check out the new Elvis movie. It's really good. Tom Hanks is great as Colonel Parker, but Austin Butler absolutely kills it as Elvis, and the music is great. I'm not much for Christmas music, but Elvis did the best Christmas music ever done by a popular entertainer, and he was a great gospel singer as well. If the king was here, I know he would say this: "Little mama, ladies and gentlemen, I'd be much obliged if you'd like and subscribe to the Hillbilly Review channel. He's a close personal friend of mine. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're a wonderful audience."